Clovercrest Media Group presents a CMG podcast. Keys to the City.
Keys to the city, baby. When you see us, so you know.
Crossed up by Kobe, little floater to Shaq, and then Shaq goes like this, and the rest is history. Pay attention. Don't tell me what to do, devil woman.
But
speaking of those Lakers, hold on. But I didn't make my. I said Denver's gonna win.
Yeah, you did. You said that.
There's no other show like that. Clovercrest is doing great things right now.
Streaming everywhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our main event.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Throwing Jabs Podcast. I'm your host, Big Jace, joined as always by my man Joe Guire and Jared Jones. And let's recap last week. The Battle of the Plants. Caleb Plant dominantly defeats 20-108 three times by the judges. Dominates the other Caleb Truax. Joe, what did you think of this fight?
I think you meant the Battle of the Calebs as opposed to the Battle of the Plants, but point well taken. Epic beatdown, as you mentioned. He took all 12 rounds, goes to 21-0 in his career. Utilized a really cool left jab hook. Whatever that was, it worked really well. It set up his right through a ton of combos. Truax landed a couple of nice shots, but when he did, Sweet Hands would just eat him and keep on coming. He landed 179 punches to Truax's 47. After the fight, Plant said that he wants to become the first undisputed super middleweight champion of all time. I'm sure he does. But the path for Plant going forward means Canelo Alvarez, who's already got a date on February 27th, and assuming he wins that fight, he's already agreed to fight Billy Joe Saunders in May.
With who? Don't look at your notes.
Billy Joe Saunders. Yes, the fight February 27th, Avni Yildirim is his next date. So the question becomes where exactly does Plant fit in here? He does have some mandatories. Danny Jacobs might be in order, but one other thing to note in this fight, Caleb hurt his left hand.
Yeah,
probably from slamming it up against Truax's face all night, and we'll need a little bit of time to recover. Which might work out well because there's nothing for him till probably the end of summer at the earliest.
Well, and can he compete with those guys? I mean, this was, like you said, hands down, really dominant performance. But when guys are that dominant, I want to see him finish. And not only didn't Plant finish, he looked a little lackluster when he tried, when he was like, all right, I'm going to get this guy with 3 or 4 punch combo, and then I'll just go back to kicking his ass from the outside. I'd like to see him try to finish. That's what kind of pulled the Max Holloway fight for me, is he, the entire time, was trying to finish that other guy. Get in here, stand toe-to-toe with me, trade shots. I'm going to finish you. I'm a fighter. And there was none of this, well, you know, I'm kicking his butt. I should just take it to decision. No, get out here. I'm a fighter. I want to fight. I didn't see a lot of that from Plant. This is a great fighter. This is a top shelf fighter, but this is not a pound for pound elite. And the next steps for him are very, very dangerous ones.
Well, yeah, you know, I think cardio is an issue for Plant. And as of right now, I mean, he's not in Canelo's league to last long enough. Canelo's definitely a 12-round guy. And it's pretty, I love it. But look, not for nothing. This was a great fight from Caleb Plant. I walked away a lot more impressed with him after this fight than I had been before it. So he's at least he got that going for him. But the super middleweight title, I don't know. Other than Canelo, other than Canelo, who's really crazy for it though? You know what I mean? No one's dying for it. Give me a break.
No, yeah. I mean, obviously the fights to make is Canelo. I think Billy Joe Saunders would be an interesting matchup with Plant. The thing with Plant, he dominated with his left hand, but he also did eat up some punches. He was hanging it low, and Truax was able to slip some in. during the exchanges. So if it is like a Canelo, a Billy Joe Saunders, someone who is on that upper level and not a Caleb Truax, those punches are going to mean a lot more than what they did here. Jared, who do you think has a better chance again? Who do you think would dominate Plant more right now? Billy Joe Saunders or Canelo? Or do you think Plant will win?
Geez. I don't know. Styles make fights, sure, but I don't know that there's anybody that Saunders has an easier time with than Canelo.
Okay, interesting.
I think Canelo would dominate anybody you put in front of him. If he's dominant, he's going to dominate him more than Saunders. I don't see a fight where the style matches up so well that I'd rather fight Canelo than Saunders. I am not anybody in that weight class and say, you know what? I'd rather have Canelo. It's a more winnable fight for me based on Saunders style. I don't buy that. I wouldn't believe them if they did.
All right. Okay. Joe, who do you like more for this next fight for Plant? Canelo or Billy Joe Saunders? I know they both have fights lined up. They're both looking.
I don't think he wants Canelo yet. Again, not that Saunders is like a walk in the park, but
he's not.
I think as far as again, if you're Plant, you're not ready for Canelo next. This fight showed that to me for sure. So I would be very concerned with that. I still think he probably has a ways to go and at least another fight in him before he gets to either one of those fellas. So I think I think he'll be fine for now.
All right. And that was recapping last week's fights. But now let's get in to a juicy who you got this week. Who you got, the Fight Night cover athlete. Now, earlier this week, EA Sports and college football announced that they are reviving the college football franchise, which brings up the question, what about EA Sports' Fight Night franchise? I know we talked about this about a year ago, Jared and I, on the show about the idea of revitalizing a boxing video game. But Joe, actually, I'm going to start with you, Jared. Who would be your cover athlete if they were to remake Fight Night?
Now, I want to say first that I was ranked number 4 a long, long time ago in the original Fight Night online. I was a beast at that game. So I just want to say that out loud. I've never seen anybody with a world ranking like that when it comes to online video games because it's the whole world. They actually matched me with the number 1 guy, and I got beat 3 times in a row and watched my ranking go 27, 72, 114. But man, I was doing good in those fights, and I wanted to fight. And that's how I want my fighters to be, honestly, is how I would take that fight. You know, I saw it pop up. I could have walked away and just waited and filtered through bums until my ranking got a little better. Wait for him to lose to somebody else, but what fun is that?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I love the game. I hope they would. But when you look at the numbers from a financial standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them, I don't think. Thank you, Tony. Thank you. You damn right. So it's hard to make sense of financially. Would I get it? Yes, I would get if they came out with a new system that had just that game for it. I would absolutely be down. I would be one of the people who had it, but hard to say. And I love this who you got, who goes on the cover, because I don't feel like there's any one boxer that really stands out to me right now is like, oh, that's the guy. I think I'd take Tyson Fury. If I'm being realistic, but if I'm being really honest about who I want on the cover, it's still Loma. This is what I think fighters should be aspiring to look like. This should be the best 130, 135 pound fighter in your video game. And he should be impossible to hit and really hard to beat if you're good at using it. So who do you put on the card? I mean, it might still be Loma, even with the loss. And again, that's what I want my fighters to look at. Who else went up a weight class and fought an undefeated lion that nobody else wanted to fight? Guys aren't doing that right now. Love that guy. Even with the loss, you can't take that one loss and hold it. You know, Marvin Hagler had some losses. Watch those fights. Because if I'm in Hagler's corner for every one of those fights, it's hard to say I scored the Sugar Ray Leonard fight for Sugar Ray. But you could make an argument for Hagler in all of his losses. You know, and Loma, could you make the argument he was coming on late? He was a little bit small, but man, that's the guy. I've got a guy I want Elliot and Trin watching when they're doing pad work. That's the guy I want them watching right now. So that should be the cover of the video game, even with the loss.
All right, Joe, do you see it?
It's a tough sell, Jared. I'm feeling you because I'm a Loma guy, but coming off a big L like that, Marvin Hagler was never the face of a video game, and it's because of the losses. Canelo Alvarez, I know the name's sort of been bandied about. It seems like that might be the guy. He does have a $300 million contract. He's a big name in boxing.
The guy he's fighting next won't be in the game. Won't even exist in the video game. How many hundreds of fighters would the game have to have before? What the hell is the guy's name? You said it earlier. I was impressed.
But listen,
I don't know the guy's name. I haven't paid enough attention to figure out what the guy's name is that's fighting Canelo Alvarez next.
Jared, wouldn't it be nice if you could make Canelo's fights for him on Fight Night? You could fight Triple G. You could fight the Charlo brothers. You could make those things happen, and because Canelo's never going to do it, so this could be your chance through video games to see what Canelo could be.
You're right.
I'll fight him first, get my payday, and then we'll find out how good a boxer he is.
Now,
but yeah, that's my plan, Joe.
The person I would like to see on the cover, of course, is Terrence Bud Crawford. But according to his own promoter, he's not a draw, so we're not going to sell any games. So I'll go with the guy you mentioned. I think once Tyson Fury finishes off Anthony Joshua, unifies the heavyweight championship, he'll be the face of the sport. I love this guy. I think he's one of the better speakers in all of boxing. I could listen to that guy speak at length. I would love him to be on the cover of that game. And if not, what are the Paul brothers?
Oh my God. I mean,
want to sell those games.
It's not outside the realm of possibility. And I hate the fact
50 and Floyd.
Yeah,
Jake Paul, Fight Night 5.
Oh my God.
I'd rather see him in Fright Night 5.
Yeah.
No, but I agree with you, Joe. I do think Bud Crawford's the guy. I mean, if you want someone to actually represent the game as a whole, that's doing the best job representing boxing, maybe Bud Crawford should be the highest rated guy in the game, like be the 99 overall.
I like that.
Cover athlete, I right now you got to go Anthony Joshua. I mean, that guy he's the poster boy of boxing right now. Like, I mean, look at how he's built. He's built like a Greek god. I mean, this guy will sell it. This is the perfect guy to put.
I thought he was going to say Anthony Johnson.
Yeah. He's like, wait a minute. Is Conor McGregor considered a boxer or an MMA fighter? Because he says he's a boxer.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, as far as Bud Crawford goes, he's a class act. Yeah, you're right. He doesn't get the respect he deserves. All right, so yeah, maybe let's go down a different road here. Who would be the highest rated? Do you think that Loma deserves that 99 overall, Jared?
Not with the loss. No, I'm with you. I'm with Bud Crawford. Yeah, and I mean, I agree with Joe. You're trying to sell video games. It's tough because we want to be able to differentiate between the best fighters and the biggest draw. You know, you can't put 50 Cent on the front of a boxing game. He fights Mayweather. Is that a draw? Hell yeah. But is he a boxer? No. It's ridiculous. You need to separate this out. And no, I'm totally comfortable with Bud Crawford having the higher overall rating. I would actually be comfortable with Joshua having a higher rating than Fury. I think he's a better boxer.
Do you agree
I think he gets mauled in that fight. But skill-wise.
Close. It's close. I don't know. Well, I mean, again, we'll find out in real life before we ever get to a video game. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, then there'll be guys with Wilder that can beat just about anybody because they have figured out how to land that punch, and he's going to have that power rating. So,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes. He'll have a 100 for his power, but an 88 for his boxing skills.
Yeah. Joe Frazier in the first game was the heavyweight.
All right. Like Ngannou in the UFC games now.
Yeah.
But
Timber.
that was a great who you got. But before we get into the preview of tonight's fights, here's a little message from Clovercrest Media Group.
When I was 12 years old, I became a Jack Nicholson superfan. This happened almost overnight on an evening in February 1997 when I first saw The Shining.
Here's Johnny.
In those 20-plus years, I never stopped being a Jack superfan.
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Get ready for You Don't Know Jack, hosted by me. Subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform.
There is You Don't Know Jack podcast. Make sure you check that out if you love Jack Nicholson. Clovercrestmedia.com for a bunch of awesome podcasts, including this one. But let us talk about the UFC Fight Night this weekend. Overeem versus Volkov is the main event, but let's start things off with the co-main event. An interesting bantamweight matchup as number 2 ranked Corey Sandhagen takes on Frankie Edgar. The winner of this could find themselves in the title hunt for the winner of Jan and Sterling. Joe, what do you think of this fight?
All right, let's break it down. Sandhagen, 28 years old. He is tall. He's 5'11". He got a 70-inch reach, 13-2 with 5 knockouts, 3 submissions, and 5 decisions. He is a 4-1 favorite going into this fight. Submitted once in his career and lost 1 decision. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, although you would not have guessed that in his fight against Aljamain Sterling when he got choked out. Oh man, that was a rough fight. Again, for a guy who does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he was on the ground for a long time and just ultimately couldn't get out of anything. It was sad. Sandhagen has a degree in psychology, Jared, from the University of Colorado, which I found to be pretty mind-blowing. You don't see a lot of that. In his 13 wins, 6 of his 7 opponents were struck out. He's got a 6.8 significant strike per minute. I mean, this guy will just clean your clock over and over again. He mixes up the style. You'll see him switch between southpaw and orthodox, which tends to really not only confuse his opponents, but and you saw it again, the Max Holloway fight with Alexander the Great. You saw that bit of hesitancy, and you're going to get that in a Sandhagen fight for sure. Frankie Edgar, mind you, 39 years old, an absolute legend in the business, 5'6", 68-inch reach. 24-8 for his career, 17 knockouts, 13 decisions. He's only been knocked out twice in his entire career. Former college wrestler, D1 wrestler. He does Muay Thai. First-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Trained under Renzo Gracie. Big wins in this guy's career. He's, obviously the fights against BJ Penn, which, mind you, all in his prime. All 3 wins against BJ when BJ was in his prime. He's beaten Cub Swanson twice, knocked out Gray Maynard to end the trilogy. An absolute beast in the ring, tough, gritty guy, averages 2.28 takedowns every 15 minutes, which I think he can use against Sandhagen, who has very questionable takedown defense. Edgar is very technically sound. I mean, Sandhagen, to his credit, absorbs 4.08 punches per minute. Frankie has a 66% strike defense rate. I love Frankie Edgar, one of my all-time favorites, but I did get burned going against Sandhagen last time. So I'm going to take Sandhagen. I think this one goes the distance. I think this will be a great fight. I think there'll be a lot of back and forth. I don't see Sandhagen taking out Edgar, but I think at his advanced age, I just think that this could be too much. Sandhagen certainly is an up and comer in this division. So There you have it.
I agree with everything except for the pick.
Oh,
I'm down with everything except for the pick. This is the number 2 underdog, biggest underdog on the card. It'll be the biggest upset on the card. Frankie will hold up better with his stand-up than people think in this fight. And he's superior wrestling skills on the ground. Yes, 39 years old, but Frankie Edgar turned back the clock tonight and upset Sandhagen. And I agree with everything else. Sandhagen's up and coming. Edgar's old and on his way out, but I'm taking the upset here. I think Edgar has it in him to beat this guy. I think his jiu-jitsu's better, his wrestling's better, and his stand-up is going to be better than people think. Great fight, though. Fight of the night, probably.
Can I tell you what made me go against Edgar in the end?
39 years old.
That doesn't help, but he's lost 3 of his last 5. 3 of his last 5, and he lost to Zombie. He lost to Korean Zombie. He lost to Ortega, and he lost to Holloway. All bigger guys. And Sandhagen's 5'11". Another one of those big guys, and that's the only thing I worry about Frankie is it seems guys like this tend to give him fits at the advanced stage. If this was 10 years ago, I'd take Edgar to knock his block off, but
I think he knows he's going to need takedowns. I think Edgar knows that he's going to need that to beat this guy. And like you said, his takedown defense is suspect. Sandhagen ends up on the ground getting controlled, half a round here and there. He could lose a fight by decision. I think to win the fight, Sandhagen has to stop Edgar.
I
do it by stoppage.
I agree with that. I think Sandhagen is going to get that stoppage. I think he's going to wall Frankie Edgar. They're going to piece each other up on the feet. Frankie's going to look for a takedown. Corey Sandhagen's going to cinch in a guillotine and then get Edgar to tap. I think Edgar spent too much time. He spent too much time at featherweight. He should have moved down to bantamweight sooner. Get in with the Dominic Cruzes, the Uriah Fabers, the TJ Dillshaws. He should have been part of that. This is a new blood of bantamweights, and he's just the old lion, and the young lions are going to kill him off. And for I don't see Frankie having this is the highest I see him getting at bantamweight. To be honest with you, maybe he loses this fight when TJ Dillashaw gets back off his suspension. That's a fight you make. But I don't see Frankie Edgar getting past him. I think Sandhagen submits him early in the fight. They piece each other up on the feet. Edgar goes for the takedown, and Sandhagen finds a submission in there. And I see Corey Sandhagen walking away victorious here. And next in line after the Jan Aljo fight.
This will be Frankie's last significant win.
That's what you think? Okay.
That's what I think.
I hope that happens, Jared. I'm with you.
I'd like to see him get a bantamweight title shot.
It's not like Frankie Edgar's a bum here. That's certainly not what I'm suggesting.
Matches up pretty well with Jan too.
What's that?
Matches up pretty well with Jan too.
Oh yeah.
If Jan finds a way past Sterling and Edgar can beat Sandhagen, we might be looking at a champion here at 40 years old.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Because I'm not putting my money on it, but
yeah,
yeah. Because
heavyweight,
the idea that it could happen just feels good. You're saying there's a chance. I like that.
I mean, this is bantamweight, not heavyweight. You can't have a 40-year-old champ. I'm sorry, but speaking of heavyweights, let's get on to the main event.
Champion
and 40-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, talk about an old man, Alistair Overeem takes on Alexander Volkov, 5 versus 6 in the UFC heavyweight division. I mean, Alistair Overeem's on this last final hurrah, this last push to get that title shot before he retires. In my opinion, Overeem is like the best heavyweight striker in all of mixed martial arts history. Decorative, former K1 Grand Prix champion. Joe, break this fight down for me.
Look, I love Overeem. He's one of my all-time favorites. 25 knockouts, 17 submissions among those 47 wins. But he's had the lights turned out on himself 14 times.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Oh.
And as you pointed out, Chase, one of the most well-rounded and most respected guys in the heavyweight division. It's why his career has been able to last this long. He's got a great background in Muay Thai. Used to be mostly overhands, hooks, and knees. He's learned how to become a much better grappler. I don't know if you guys know this. This is pretty wild. He's a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, that's one belt up from white, which they literally give you when you sign up. 30 years in the MMA. Jace, for $230, you could be one belt behind Overeem in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's serious.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Big Man's won 6 of his last 10. They've all been knockout wins. I believe all 4 losses have been knockout losses. Guy's only gone past the 5th, only gone 5 rounds twice in his entire career. One was a knockout win. The other was a knockout loss. The problem is if Overeem wins this, and I don't believe he's going to, all 4 guys that are ranked ahead of him have knocked him out cold. So I don't know where he goes from here. Drago, on the other hand, 6'7", love this guy, 80-inch reach, 32-8, 21 Ks, 3 submissions, 8 decisions. He has been knocked out twice and submitted twice. In his career, he's a black belt in karate. He utilizes the that karate kick very well. He's also a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a former heavyweight champion in Bellator and M1 Global. So these guys have both, enjoyed the glory outside of the UFC. Unlike most tall fighters, though, Drago imposes his size and his exceptional reach. Takes a fight straight up. The old 1-2, lots of head and front kicks, really good takedown defense. If you saw his fight against big ticket Walt Harris, I mean, it was a kick to the solar plex that basically caused Harris to drop his arms, and then he went in for the kill. When you look at the people who have beaten Volkov, Czech Congo, Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, these are big strikers, but he's always moving forward. He forces his opponents to circle close to the cage. He doesn't get into wild exchanges, which is another thing I noticed with Overeem. Guys tend to get a little insane in the ring with him, and it sets him up. Volkov counters at a 60% accuracy rate. Also should be noted that the loss that he suffered to the Black Beast, it occurred with 11 seconds left in the fight. If you'll recall, that should have been a victory for Volkov. In reviewing the fight again yesterday, I had remembered exactly what I thought. As I remembered, just before the knockout, he got hit with the same punch. It didn't land flush, and yet for some reason, he didn't see it coming. 3 seconds later, it was right to the jaw, and it laid him out. He is the betting favorite in this fight. I think he's just going to come at Overeem, this is Overeem's. This is how he fights now. It's just hands up here. Don't hit me.
Away.
That's not going to work against Drago. I think he's going to end up somewhere in the second round, the ground to pound Herb Dean or whoever's going to come in and be like, all right, we're out of here, boys. It's done. And then Overeem can ride off into the sunset because look, Volkov's right behind him. So Volkov moves up in the ratings. And now you could say all 6 guys ahead of Overeem have knocked him out. Not good. Not good, gatekeeper.
I can't really pick this fight. I mean, if you're betting on this fight, take the Undereem.
I love it.
It's not thanks. It's not going to go the distance. Volkov, if you have to take one or the other, but either guy could land a punch and finish this fight straight away. Somebody's going to bed. It won't go the distance, and that's more my prediction than taking Volkov, is that we'll finish inside the distance for sure.
All right, I'm gonna go Overeem. Volkov doesn't have that. I mean, Overeem does have his chin is pretty brittle, but Volkov doesn't really have that necessarily big, usual heavyweight knockout power. And I think that's where Overeem gets a The problem, and I know, Joe, you talked about how Overeem's just a blue belt. He does have a nasty guillotine, though. Overeem has utilized that before in the past. And so if Volkov looks to try and take him down, I mean, Volkov isn't outstanding on the ground either. So if
Volkov's just going to punch and punch and kick and punch. It's going to be that. It's going to be a lot of that. Don't worry about there won't be.
No, yeah. And I mean, you're talking about the most decorated striker in the heavyweight division. You don't think Overeem's going to know? The thing where that Overeem gets caught up now with his losses is that power. And I don't think Volkov necessarily has that insane one punch.
I don't think he's going to need it. I don't think he's
power.
Need it. Hey, I wouldn't be me if I didn't touch on what Tony just said. We're not doing our diligence when it comes to safety in a sport with people where people die. If we're overlooking the fact that he's been knocked unconscious 14 times with 18 losses and still giving him fights like this, listen, I've had the lights turned out like 6 times, I think. And I remember the later ones getting you're foggy for a while, and that while gets longer. And the foggy stays longer, and it gets foggier. And I can't, if I'd been knocked out 14 times, to try to imagine adding 8 of those foggy episodes into my life and onto my brain and putting that onto the mileage of my body. Man, that's hard to imagine. That's really hard to imagine. Haven't been,
3 of the 14.
So what are we talking? What are we up
in
to?
your life
We up to
have you
7
been-
feet knockouts? Jeez.
Yeah, jeez. And you're talking and maybe sparring here and there. Yeah, you've been asleep 17 times. Dude, I stopped hardcore, a sit-down chat with Dizzle where, hey, you're not that guy in scrub scraps anymore that's just going to take the biggest kid that shows up that nobody knows anything about and fight him once a month. You're not that guy anymore. You're late 30s or whatever it was. And it's not that you can't be that guy anymore. The lights go out a few more times and stuff starts getting foggy and nobody needs to see that. And that's it for Overeem, man. You can't be this guy anymore. 17 times on record you've been knocked out. No way, dude. That's too much. We've got to, at some point, there has to be a check and balance for this in our sport. There has to be. We can't just have fundraisers after he's brain dead. That doesn't make sense because a lot of less people show up for the fundraisers than show up for the fights. I can tell you that. I personally know some guys who can't think anymore. And those people that were there screaming for him during the bright lights are not there anymore. The people that want you to go to war and trade punches in every fight are not the same people that show up to the hospital.
All right.
This should not be overlooked. Tony, I agree. We can't just say that and move on without.
Very well said, too, Jared. I mean, again, that's right. That's what the fans want. They want these guys standing toe to toe and bashing each other, right? Guys start leaning in on each other a little bit, and we get impatient. Hey, allow this guy to get his bearings together for a minute. These are 2 large humans slugging each other in the head over and over again. It's funny when I watch guys get tied up, I don't get frustrated like a lot of fans do. I just think I wonder if they're talking to each other. You know what I mean? I wonder if they're dude, just give on 8-10 seconds here.
You're a great hugger, man.
This is nice. This is nice. All right, ready? On 3. We'll separate. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I get it. It's a tough sport. Sometimes I watch it and I watch guys get clipped over and I'm like, oh God, how? Where is that coming from? That giant heart in your chest or something. But look, Overeem's this guy clearly loves to fight.
Yeah.
He clearly loves to fight. And I give him all the credit in the world because, again, I mean, we've seen guys get knocked out once, Jared, and it all falls apart. And this is a guy who can take his licks. And, I think for that reason, as long as he stays healthy, I don't mind watching Overeem fight a little bit more. But I think we really got to. Got to really watch
Katie Taylor's. Yeah, it's like Katie Taylor's last fight. I can't remember her name, but you know, some of this when you're a fighter and you're in that condition, and I'll tell you, I kind of washed over that conversation with my little brother Dizzle about telling me when it was time. But there were a lot of tears in that conversation that I'm not that guy anymore. You know, that's tough when you're a fighter to yes, changed his whole life. The person that he is different. It's not just a fighter. We can see it in the octagon, the new Tony Ferguson. But his wife has a new Tony Ferguson. His kids have a new Tony Ferguson. You understand what I'm saying? We can't ignore when those things happen. And I got rocked in a fight was what happened. I was fighting a kid that was, 315 pounds and 6'5", and he clipped me with something, and I almost went unconscious in front of all of my family and friends, and ended up with pulled the fight out of the fire, and was still had that, hey, but I won the fight, right? But we can't have that, dude. You have to move this into a different capacity. And that's where we are with this guy. With somebody needs to care enough about him to save him from himself.
No, yeah, and think about
he's a fighter. I love the guy. He's a fighter, and he gets out there and fights, and that's what I want from my fighters. But what I want even more than fighters who are going to keep fighting and figure out if they're the best or not is the people standing next to them, is the Dizzles to lean in and say, you've had the lights turned out 17 times on record, and it's time, man. It's time.
Yesterday, I caught a headline on my phone where I guess he's demanding another shot at the title. Overeem is, and my thought was, well, you better beat Volkov first before you start running your mouth. But again, every single one of those guys in front of him, including Stipe, turned the lights out. Is that a good idea for him to go back to? I mean.
And some of those knockouts were vicious too.
Yeah,
like Ngannou, Blades, like those were, and he's still like fighting. That's rough. Like some of those knockouts, like some knockouts are all right, but those were vicious and gnarly.
The Ngannou knockout, I wake up sometimes and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
like I'm Overeem in the dream. You know what I mean? And it's terrifying.
But all right, I like that.
Hey, I do Tyson Fury when
yeah, I love that.
Welcome to the party, baby.
All right, we got Jared going with those with talking about those concussions. But so Jared, we're gonna end the show like we always do, and brother, hit us with that flurry.
I'd like to start with congratulations to Jamal James. If you want to throw that graphic up for me, Jamal James, an American professional boxer, has held the WBA welterweight title since February 2021, having been promoted from interim champion, a title held since 2020. So, congratulations, Jamal James. I can imagine he was sitting up in bed, leaning against some pillows on his laptop in his bathrobe, scrolling through social media, and notification popped up, and he had an email from the WBA. And then, he read the email and called his friend like, hey, guess what? I'm the undisputed welterweight boxing champion of the world. But he said, oh, man, how did you do it? And he said, well, I just got an email from the WBA. These guys don't even care anymore. They're not even hiding it from him. We talk sometimes about how they manipulate and secretly control the narrative. What are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? You got promoted to champion. No offense to Jamal James. I'm sure he's a fantastic fighter, but I've never heard of him before. And welterweight champion without winning a fight doesn't make any sense to me. An email. You got an email that told you were a boxing champion. We're making a joke about it. Now the Paul brothers are hard to blame, but they're part of the problem that we can fix. Floyd Mayweather just came out and said he wants to fight both Paul brothers and then have a winner-take-all grudge match against 50 Cent. The Paul brothers and 50 Cent. This is who Floyd Mayweather's going to fight next. None of those guys do I really blame for this. I blame the sanctioning bodies. I blame a system that has been set up for them to look out for their own best interests and never have to fight the next best guy. Do you remember the outrage? We mentioned college football earlier. Now, there was a time when the college football season would end, and then we'd have a vote to see who the best college football team was. And it was such complete bullshit, that the fans went nuts and demanded that the NCAA put the best teams on the field at the end of the season so that we could figure out who the best was. Because it's a sport after all, and we want to know who the best is. And we're never going to figure it out if we're promoting our champions, if we're calling them to tell them they are the best in their weight class, because that doesn't make any sense. That's a title they should earn in the ring. Smoke and mirror show. Boxing has become a circus. Whew. We have plans. We have plans for it, though, with the Throwing Jab podcast. Your friends here, we've got plans to fix it. We're going to start with scrub scraps at the bottom. And by the time we get to the top, these disgraceful sanctioning bodies aren't going to know what hit them. I promise you there are plans to fix all of this. We got big things coming up this year for scrub scraps and throwing jabs. So stay positive, stay supportive, stay tuned, and get your popcorn ready, because we're going to fix some of this trash that has become combat sports. Thank you, guys.
The Cross'em Wrestling Entertainment Podcast, presented by Clovercrest Media, is what you AEW fans have been looking for. Noah Cross and Tyler Bard give their take on every week's episode of Dynamite. If you are a massive AEW fan, then it is time to join us every Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Stay Cross'em.
Thank you very much, Jared, for that flurry. Throwing Jabs, the only combat sports podcast where you can laugh, yell, and cry all in one. Not a lot of crying today, but we laughed, we yelled. And thank you, Joe and Jared, for joining me. Thank you for Clovercrest Media. Make sure you go check out clovercrestmedia.com for not to just check out the latest information on this podcast, but 30 other podcasts, not just sports, everything, politics, true crime. If you're in the need for a podcast, go to clovercrestmedia.com. For myself, Joe, and Jared, thank you guys for watching, and we hope to see you next time. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our main event.